So welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us on our final virtual event during National Nursing Week 2025. My name is Tess Wanziak, and I am a registered nurse and the lead for continuing education and professional development with the Nurse and Nurse Practitioners of British Columbia. I'm also a PhD candidate at the University of Victoria in what is hopefully my final year. Please let it be my final year. And with me today is Dr. Elena Payne, who has recently successfully defended her dissertation.
Thank you, Tess. Happy to be here.
So before we begin, we would like to acknowledge that I myself am joining you today from the traditional and unceded homelands of the Lekwungen-speaking people, which also include the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations, on what today colonially is known as Victoria, BC. I live here as an uninvited white settler of Ukrainian, Scottish, some French Canadian descent, and I feel so much gratitude to live on these lands and work and research and play. And as the Provincial Association of Nurses, we do our work and support nurses to do their work across the entirety of the so-called province of British Columbia, which has been stewarded by Indigenous people since time immemorial and is home to 203 First Nations, chartered Métis communities, as well as visiting and sheltering Inuit. So I see some folks have already acknowledged their territories when they came in. So if you feel called to, please let us know what homelands you're calling in from, and welcome today to this exciting topic about research. So I don't want to speak on behalf of Elena, but please bear with us because we are huge research nerds. So if it seems like we are extremely enthusiastic to talk about research on a Friday before a long weekend, that would be why. So our plan for today will focus kind of on two aspects that we hope will get you as excited as research about research as us. So the first half of the presentation, we're going to talk about research and quality improvement and kind of flesh out a little bit about what those approaches mean, and how they may show up in the work that you do as nurses and hopefully budding researchers. And then we're going to start from the very beginning, where many of us start our research journey, which is asking questions, usually about what we see in practice or something that has come up for us in practice. And a lot of these times, the questions that we have may or may not be answered by the literature, or we have questions about whether there may be a better way to provide care in the work that we do as nurses. Then, I know you're at the edge of your seats here. We're going to talk about funding. We're going to have a little conversation about actually like how to actualize our research or quality improvement project. And then for the majority of us, I'm assuming, we do need some support to support our research, and that may show up in funding and or release time. So I'll talk a little bit about that and the importance of that, and hopefully support the work that you want to do or the work that you are doing. And then the next portion, we're going to open it up to see if you have practice questions or research ideas that you've been toying with, and if you would like some feedback on how to start your research journey. And then our last little section will really be just about, for those that want to stick around, the graduate education journey. We will have a little bit of space to talk about the process of different types of education that is available to nurses. Elena and I have some tips and tricks about applying to graduate school, what to look for, how to be successful. And again, we'll have some space for questions and dialogue about nursing and nursing research or graduate education. And then, time permitting, Elaine and I can also talk a little bit about perhaps the research that we've been involved in. I know for myself, I'm always a little hesitant to talk about what I've been working on because it's a bit spicy, especially for a Friday afternoon, maybe. But I certainly am happy to talk about some of the preliminary results that I've been working on for my dissertation. Yeah. So I'll pause there, Elena. I see the emojis, so I appreciate. I'm used to riffing off of students, so I don't see anybody. So I'm just kind of talking into the ether. So please stop me at any time if people have questions. Thank you.
Awesome.
So at this time, I would love to pass the torch over to my lovely colleague, Elena, Dr. Payne, to give you an update on some of the work that NNPBC has been doing regarding research, as well as a little snapshot of some of our future plans that we have when it comes to research with NNPBC.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tess. Hi, everyone. I briefly introduced myself by name at the start here. My name is Elena. I work as the Manager of Practice, Education, and Research with Nurses and Nurse Practitioners of BC. I've been with the association for almost 3 years now, and really enjoying this new role in this work. So a little bit of background about NNPBC and research. We have always supported nurse researchers engaging in their work, particularly when research relates to nurses or the populations we serve. And recently, about a year ago, we started to build out new roles within the association to help cultivate that research capacity. My role being one of them, so the manager of practice, education, and research, covering those three domains of nursing. And this has really provided us with the opportunity to lean into not only quality improvement or knowledge translation, but really start to build out the capacity of the association in the realm of knowledge generation as well. So some examples of some key aspects of work that this portfolio works on include supporting nurses engaging in research. So if you're launching a research study and you want to recruit some nurses, please reach out to NNPBC, and if we can help support you in that endeavor, we will do so. And we can also provide ongoing advisory and consultation throughout your research process. So historically or previously, if you're applying for a grant or research funding application and NNPBC is listed as a collaborator, we are committed to walking alongside of you in that research journey, recognizing that members are always more than invited to reach out to us if they have any questions or need any tips on supporting their research projects, wherever that may be. And then the third option, or the third key piece of work there, is also supporting you in translating your results and sharing the results of your study with the broader audience so that the results of our research can tangibly impact the work that we do. Some past projects that we've been a part of include being collaborators on various types of research grants and funding. So if you're applying for, say, through Michael Smith or CIHR and you want a provincial nursing association to, again, walk alongside of you, we are happy to do that. Please reach out to myself directly and I can absolutely provide some more insight on that. And then we've also engaged in some other initiatives that help support evidence-based practice, really advancing that strong evidence base that nursing is grounded in. So two pieces of work that we have recently released include an evidence summary on joint appointments, recognizing that in nursing, our work often remains within one domain of practice. So you work in practice at the point of care or at the bedside, or you work in education, and there's not a ton of opportunities that enable nurses to overlap our knowledge, skills, expertise across those domains. So we did just release a brief evidence summary that helps articulate some of the challenges to joint appointments, as well as identify the facilitators to successfully integrating joint appointments into nursing work. Another example of an evidence summary we just released pertained to the roles of RNs and LPNs in primary care. So earlier this week, you would have heard from our primary care teams and all the amazing work that they're doing. And as part of that work, we did another evidence summary that really focuses on the roles and the contributions of nurses in these settings, recognizing that in BC, RNs and LPN integration into primary care hasn't necessarily been optimized up until recently. And then some future plans for the association. I know one thing that I envision and I hope to engage in is really building that formal research-based infrastructure to support BC nurses. So engaging in quality improvement initiatives, engaging in funding, and really leaning into that oh my gosh, knowledge generation. I can speak today on this Friday afternoon, knowledge generation to help contribute to that evidence base that nurses are grounded in. So that is a little brief overview of the association in relation to research. And I will say, while Tess continues this incredible presentation that we have put together, I am doing my best to monitor the chat, and I have a Q&A box open on the other side of my screen. So I really invite you all to ask your questions, contribute to dialogue. We'll try to make this a bit more interactive. So if someone asks a question while Tess is on a slide, I might just respectfully interrupt her and let her know that a question has been asked that we can answer right away. So by all means, please use those communication mechanisms to speak with us throughout the presentation. We hope it to be a little bit informal and more focused on dialogue today. So thank you, Tess.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you. And I appreciate, certainly, we also have a tech fairy in the background as well, who I so appreciate everyone's help today and for joining us. So our tech fairy, if you're around, we do have a poll for everyone. And we're really curious, for the folks that have joined us, if you have ever participated in research. There it goes. Amazing. Thank you so much, Fairy. Yeah.
Tess, can you see the poll live?
I
Or you can't?
can.
Oh, you can.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
good.
can. Yeah, that's great. I'm just jumping back to my other screen, so let me know when you think we have some results here.
Totally. I'm just waiting it for the movement to slow. Okay. Oh, okay. We got about 17%, so about 4 participants who have participated in research as a principal investigator.
Amazing.
About 38% saying, yes, I have worked on research teams as a research assistant. 50% saying, yes, I've participated in formal quality improvement projects. 42% saying, yes, I've engaged, oh, sorry. Yep, yes, I've engaged in informal research to improve my nursing practice. And 13% saying, not yet, but I would like to.
Oh, wonderful. Did anybody say no? I have zero interest in research whatsoever.
Let's
So-
see.
No, don't worry.
Oh, no, no one
Thank you.
selected that. So we have a group of interested participants.
Oh, yeah, so that's good. Otherwise, thank you. Yeah, I was like, oh, are you lost? Or hopefully we can make you excited about research. So I'm so glad. And I think that just shows the breadth of knowledge that's not only in this room, but the work that nurses are engaging in and are capable of. And I really think the point is we really all engage in research as nurses, whether it's capital R research or informally or improving our practice. There is some component of our work that involves some research, and the inquisitive nature of nursing, I think, really lends itself to opportunities. So I'm curious again, putting you to work a little bit. We're curious if folks have an understanding and where people are at when it comes to the difference and knowing the difference between quality improvement and research. Sorry, there's my slides here. what is the difference? If anybody wanted to take a little bit of a shot at seeing what the differences are.
I'm monitoring the chat, but it was just noted that you all might not be able to see your own contributions to the chat. So I apologize for that. I wish I knew how
Oh,
to
okay.
fix it, but we are watching it in case anyone wants to try and, yeah, answer what the difference is. Okay. So we have one, yeah, need for ethics approval or not. Awesome. QI often does not require.
Thank you, Michael. Nice to
Mhm.
see you. Don't worry if you don't know, because guess what the next slide will be? Good one. Yeah.
So QI multiple PDSA cycles. Is QI more micro and research more macro? Oh,
Nailed it.
QI applies known methods to enhance outcomes, whereas research employs systematic methods to discover unknown information. Love it.
Well said.
Hmm.
I never had any doubt. We have a bright crew with us.
We do.
Okay. And yeah, it will just be kind of a summary of what folks have already talked about. So really the textbook definition of quality improvement really boils down to improving a specific process or outcome, usually from a micro or a local level. Uh, Quality improvement tends to look at a specific setting where there has been an identified issue or problem or potential issue or problem, or something that you have done well or have innovated and that you want to share. You tend to see more specific frameworks. I know some folks had set some examples. So a specific framework like plan, study, do, act is one that you see quite a bit in quality improvement. And the reason they use these types of frameworks is they are quite prescriptive, they're accessible, they're familiar for folks. And so this really helps when you are perhaps doing a rapid quality improvement project to really kind of flesh out the issue or the research question that you have. The next kind of with quality improvement, we say that the results are often what we say in research are not necessarily, quote, generalizable because they are tend to be specific to the context or the area or a specific issue, but not always. I have some examples of quality improvement projects that certainly can be applied to different settings or different areas, but typically we don't can really consider them generalizable, but certainly important sources of information for future research. Uh, and then the next point is typically you don't usually need ethics, like one of the folks in chat had said for quality improvement project, but we want to caution and say like with any type of research, you do have a multitude of supports in place to help you do your research, including certainly NNPBC, but also where you're working. And we want you to do your research ethically and safely. So please always first go to your research department where you're working, or if you're engaged with a health authority or the university, before you jump into research, just in case. But Michael is quite right. Typically, they don't require an ethics approval or an ethics board, but just cautious with that. And then typically they involve frontline staff or folks with lived or living experience, community partners. And a lot of the time, these folks may or may not have a research background. And so quality improvement is a really fulsome way to engage people in research who may have access or like barriers to accessing higher education. And so you do tend to see some more community partnerships and engagement. when it comes to quality improvement. Hopefully, anyways. Uh, so the next one, when you look at sort of a capital R research, we say we're really talking about seeking answers to questions that perhaps have never been asked before, or creating new knowledge, like somebody in the chat had said. That in these, again, they can be generalizable in some circumstances, depending on the methodology. Um, but you're certainly able to share in different contexts or different situations. There's different methodologies, and these methodologies are either testing a hypothesis, or you're utilizing a theory, or I know people will cringe, but I will say a philosophical underpinning. And the reason we're using specific methodology is that they are recognizable and they're replicatable. Is that a word, Elena? Replicatable? I don't know.
We're making it one.
So we're making it a word. Can replicate it. Uh, like folks in the chat had said, they follow like that structured and methodologically rigorous process that is familiar. It's a common language that people would recognize. And again, like our conversation before, typically if you are going to involve human subjects, will require ethics review and approval. The results you can are often publishable, that you'll find in primary or peer-reviewed literature journals. And then again, they may or may not have direct application to clinical practice, but it certainly can be used to inform either further research or potentially um, evidence-informed practice changes or modifications.
Yes, and Tess, we do just have a comment in the chat that says,
Yeah.
if in doubt whether you need ethics review or not, you can use ARECCI. There's a link there. I actually haven't clicked on that. But yes, absolutely. If in doubt, always ask, check with your research departments at your local institution or your local health system organization. Always better to ask.
100%. Yeah, 100%. So I don't want to seem like I'm promoting a specific organization, but because I do my research out of the University of Victoria, I'll just give one example of a center. So it's the UVic Collaborative for Evidence-Informed Healthcare. It's a JBI center. And these are some of the examples of quality improvement projects that were led by registered nurses. And just to note, JBI is like a specific methodology, and they have a specific approach. And in my humble opinion, they tend to make research quite accessible. So you'll often see JBI frameworks in quality improvement projects or other research that involves digging into literature, like scoping reviews or systematic reviews. And again, there's lots of different ways to do research, and certainly there are critiques of JBI. But if folks want something to just even hang their hat on, they have some really good resources around even just screening an article for quality and things like that. So just looking at some of the examples of the research that has been done are the sickle cell, managing sickle cell in the emergency department. Sorry, I think the writing might be a bit small. Decreasing delirium, nurse-led improvement project that was done within an ICU. And then out of the Royal Jubilee Hospital in Victoria, there is a new 2S LGBTQIA plus liaison nurse that again was started by a registered nurse who saw a significant gap in the care that folks from our community were receiving, and took it upon herself to create a liaison nurse position and leveraged not only the university, but also accessing funding. And again, this was all a registered nurse who saw a gap, and we're so proud to support their work, but also have this new role. It's quite, it's such a gift. And yeah, so I find these presentations so inspiring because they're typically led by registered nurses, and I always learn something new. So if any folks are interested, there is presentations once a month on these topics, amongst others.
And Tess, is this not
Mhm.
just a beautiful example? I think about this week's National Nursing Week theme, the power of nurses to transform health. And I feel like the examples you just provided is a beautiful example of how nurses do this in our work all the time,
All
daily.
the time.
Awesome.
And I think on a personal note, I think what really re-energized me into the profession of nursing, having been frontline for many, many years, you see these potential practice gaps, or you have questions and you just don't really know where to start. And so being able to find research and find ways in which to answer those questions or investigate those questions really inspires me to continue being a registered nurse. And our hope from NNPBC and the reason we're here is to inspire you folks too who have those questions. And we are more than happy um, to bring you in because it's hard to navigate these systems that seem so overwhelming. You don't know where to start. And so we all started somewhere, and we're happy to troubleshoot with you and give you some tips. And certainly it was a learning curve for sure. So the next side, here we go. The reason I added this slide was not to give a lecture on the formulation of research questions. Although my background as a nursing instructor, I tend to like default into lecture mode, so I will restrain myself. But I wanted to emphasize that there are different ways to structure these questions that we have and reproduce the questions in a way that may seem somewhat formulaic, but also makes it easier for other people to understand what you're asking, and this becomes really important when you're a new researcher and you're applying for things like funding. They're going to want a research question that's really tight and succinct. And if you haven't sat and developed something like a research question, it's actually very challenging. It's something that it's a skill that requires like just practice, and that's why I love these kinds of frameworks because they really yeah, they help to kind of tighten what it is you're searching for. Um, so if you're like me and you get really excited about research, and you have a lot of questions, and for me, I find having different frameworks to formulate my questions um, help certainly to get my point across because I have hundreds and hundreds of questions all the time. I'm sure I was a really annoying child. But each framework will depend on the type of study that you're interested in. And ideally, you will start with what's called a feasibility assessment. So Finer is the one as an example. I probably should have put that at the top. That would have made more sense, but here we are. And then you can refine your question to determine whether it is a quantitative question, so an intervention, or you're looking at comparisons between two interventions, or you have maybe some numeric data that you want to analyze. There's also some frameworks for qualitative questions, so looking more around the experience of a population of interest. So when you're crafting these, you can play around a little bit with some of the language that you see and which framework suits your question the best. So, and again, we can make this available for you folks, or you can screenshot it if you want.
Absolutely. And I find, Tess, I don't know about you, but in
Mhm.
my experience, I feel like a good research question or a strong research question really makes the difference in the subsequent steps of your project, whether it's a literature review, so a synthesis project, or a tangible research study. I find, and perhaps I'm speaking from experience in crafting not the greatest research questions, and then later finding, wait, I wasn't that clear, or I didn't consider these outlying factors. So thank
Mhm.
you for going over these.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember, yeah, when I started my master's, they'd ask, what's your research question? And I'd ramble on for 5 minutes about something I was really excited about. Maybe that's just me because you're done your PhD and I'm not. So maybe that's part of the problem. But finding these frameworks for myself, you get really used to identifying, okay, what is your intervention or what is your population or what is um the question that you're having specifically and broken down really does help. And then you can start with the fun stuff. So we'll pause here again. Elena and I are actually really curious to see what other folks are working on, or if you have research questions that you're working on, what do you want to ask? Thinking about where you work, does anything come to mind? Also, we can use this as an opportunity for us here to celebrate you and the hard work that you've done in research. Uh, Elena and I and everyone here would love that opportunity to celebrate you and the incredible work that you're doing because we know it's hard and we know it's meaningful. So if folks want to share what they were working on, we'd love to celebrate you as well. So it's just a space.
And I'm still monitoring the Q&A box and the chat. So you can share
You're doing
in
great,
the
sweetie.
forum.
Yeah, it's okay if folks are shy.
I was wondering if we had any grad students on the webinar this afternoon, and see if that was kind of my first experience crafting my own research question.
Mhm.
It took me over a year.
Yeah, yeah. And then like one kind of springs from another to another.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow, that's incredible, Michael. So I have an NP in the organization who recently reached out about starting a QI around a fentanyl patch program for their local clinical practice, and was looking for NNPBC supports. Amazing. Please reach out to us.
Mhm.
You can email myself directly. I can put my email here in the chat. I just put my email in the chat there. Chances are you'll either hear from me directly, or I might loop Tess in for her expertise, but that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing.
Awesome. Elena, not to put you on the spot, do you want to share your?
Sure, I can absolutely share mine. So my area of interest is in the professional identity of nurses. So the title of my work was Professional Identity in Nursing, Constructions of the Student and Novice Nurse. So I look at how we understand ourselves as professional nurses, and really how language shapes that understanding and how that translates into the decisions we make, the issues we take up. And most importantly, I think right now, is how that translates into job satisfaction and leadership potential within the profession. So my study focused on nursing students and new graduate nurses over their transition of practice period, so over the first 6 months of that transition of practice, and really looked to examine the ways in which, yeah, how discourses around nurses and nursing influence how we perceive ourselves in health systems. So in these larger, exactly what you said, Tess, these larger systems that can sometimes be overwhelming and difficult to navigate, how you understand yourself as a professional and your role and your position within those larger systems. So I am looking forward to sharing more about the results. They were really interesting and quite telling, I think, with regards to the types of challenges new graduate nurses are facing right now, and the impacts that has on, yeah, their self-image and how they use their professional voice, I think was one of the key insights, and really acknowledging how professional identity and professional voice are linked together. So unfortunately, right now my thesis is embargoed, but I'm looking forward to yeah, releasing more about the results of that. And really, I think one thing that came out of it as well that was really important is the importance of mentorship and support. So when these new nurses get to any practice domain, having that wraparound support network is so important, because so much of nursing you learn in the practice setting is related to, you know, unit culture or the team who you're working with, and those are things that aren't necessarily built into a formal curriculum, regardless at what level of education that you're in. So that was something that was really important that came out. And then, yeah, also recognizing the potential of nursing voice to impact system level decisions, and how even new graduate nurses were able to readily identify that within the first 6 months of their transition of practice, which is pretty incredible. And I have more to say on that, and I'm going to keep some details until I can formally publish the results and share with everyone. But yeah, professional identity in nursing has been linked to job satisfaction, recruitment, and retention, and has actually been cited as the one of the most significant factors impacting retention to stay in the profession. So it's an important concept. Nursing identity matters. It matters how we perceive ourselves.
Read. Thank you so much. So inspiring. And I look forward to hearing more about it once the embargo has been lifted. Uh, well done. Congratulations. Just going back here. So a quick note about funding. Why apply for funding? Well, at the end of the day, we know just how time consuming a lot of research can be. And a lot of the time, this is done off the side of our desks. And there are avenues to look at potentially release time or gaining some funding that, again, so many people don't realize exist until you are like in the club. And so I just wanted to plant some seeds for folks to maybe, if they're interested, just take a look and see what's out there. But really, research does require extensive time investment. And with funding, it can support multiple different types of costs, not just your and your release time, but also things like you may not think about, like honorariums for participants, hiring transcriptionists or staff or different software. So all of these things can add up, right? Also too, it can funding can help support your knowledge translation. So whether it's publication fees or attending a conference, all of that can really add up. And because you want to share your work at the end of the day once you've finished it. But just keep in mind that not all research does require funding, but it can help. It really depends on who's involved, the timeline, the type of project. Some of the ones that are more literature based, you can do off the side of your desk. But yeah, so just keep in mind that there are things out there that people don't realize. And just a couple of examples that I've pulled again. Um, to me, it was quite surprising what is actually available once you kind of know or you're in the club or however. So we're going to share those secrets with you. Certainly, yeah, Health Research BC, as well as individual health authority grants, which come up regularly that are available depending on where you're working, which health authority. BC Nurses Union has bursaries and scholarships, as well as the Canadian Nurses Foundation. And again, feel free to reach out to us at NNPBC, and we can send you some links and some tips and tricks around that kind of funding. So happy searching. And just a quick note that all, like any types of advanced degrees in nursing certificates, not necessarily masters or PhDs, you can start certainly with micro credentials are available, and these are becoming more and more popular, where you get this short, kind of really focused intensive that will help a nurse enhance a specific skill. So we're seeing some that come out like telehealth, infection control. There's ones around patient safety, lots of different ones. So that's kind of one of the I don't want to say newer or perhaps trendier things that are starting to emerge where nurses want to enhance a specific skill. Um, so keep an eye out, and that's kind of the terminology we're calling it, micro-credentialing. And then there's specialty certification. So maybe some of you here today will have, like, for example, your critical care, or we have some certified practice nurses. And so they're really like specific field-based certificates. Of course, there's masters, NP, Master of Nursing, the Masters of Nursing Education. And then one thing that's emerging that we're seeing again, Canada's a couple years, like about 20 years behind, I would say, the US when it comes to this. So doctorates of nursing practice are fairly well established there, but we're starting to see more and more options for nurses here in Canada. So a PhD, which Elena has, and myself will have hopefully in the next 700 years, um, is really focused on more of an academic, research-based theory development, whereas a doctorate in nursing practice is practice-focused around kind of health systems or clinical decision making, sort of leadership at a more advanced level. Uh, and so, yeah, and those tend to also be more, yeah, practice-based as opposed to you may or may not have a, for example, a dissertation at the end of it. So, which leads us kind of the next tips and tricks is choosing the right program. uh, Certainly, there are a lot of options there. When you start searching around for different programs, you really want to research graduate programs that really align with your specific interests. And maybe not necessarily, you know, for myself, I didn't know what I was going to be when I grew up. I just knew that I liked research. So I just started getting degrees and started kind of following that line and here we are. And so some folks, that's okay too. But if you really have a vision that you want to be in education or you want to be in leadership, you can hone your graduate education based off of your career or trajectories or your interests. And one piece of advice certainly is looking at uh, thesis versus course-based programs. So some will have obviously both. Some will focus just on course-based. Some will have an optional thesis. It's really about the time that you want to invest, the funding that you have available, as well as if you are considering, say, a PhD or a doctorate in nursing practice. All of those are things to consider when you're choosing your program. And by all means, attend virtual info sessions, connect with advisors. They always ask me to be on these panels for like prospective students. I don't know why. I don't think I'm a great advertisement for it, but here we are. So those are always informal sessions too, where are really good, just so you can get kind of the vibe of the school. The next one, when you,
Yes.
yeah,
Sorry, I just feel like choosing the right program cannot be understated. I remember when I was looking into my master's and I was absolutely asking the same question. I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, but I think I want to pursue graduate education. And I saw all these lists of different types of masters, but didn't really know the difference between them or what they would prepare me for or the skills that I would build in each. And I know personally, I just reached out to a couple of nurse leaders that worked at the local institution and said, hey, what made you decide you wanted to do this? What was the program like? And it was really helpful because I was contemplating two very different decisions, a nurse practitioner, which is a master's, or a master's in nursing in the education stream, which is completely different. And I'm happy I undertook that evaluation because it absolutely, yeah, influenced my decision. So
Such a good point. And mine was a kind of a similar career. I really was looking at more of a nurse practitioner stream, but my background has always been mental health substance use, and I really wanted like an MP psych, and there just wasn't a program in Canada. Again, a little bit behind the States, and I was not super keen on moving anywhere, so I was like, I'll just stay in Victoria. So that's kind of how I ended up with my master's of nursing. The next kind of tip strategy is the application process can be so intimidating. You want to talk about like just how like yeah, you're looking at and seeing what they're asking. Like you talk about imposter syndrome. But what you really can do is really emphasize and highlight your clinical experience because again, at the end of the day, it's a nursing degree, who and the people that you're applying to are all nurses. And so really leveraging your clinical experience can really help. And you can frame it as um, expertise in patient care leadership. You have these systems levels insights. You can emphasize your work around working with diverse populations, trauma-informed care, um, locations like rural, remote, identifying barriers and challenges. You can talk about your experience in mentorship, preceptorship, those unit-based quality improvement projects that you've been involved in. And that leads me to kind of the next is demonstrating your potential for research because they do again understand that you likely are coming in with little to no research experience, and that is perfectly okay. Um, so yeah, looking at saying if you have participated in quality improvement, evidence-based practice initiatives, things like accreditation, all of those things are all components that demonstrate that you have the capacity to participate in research. And you want to look at things like that are transferable skills, critical thinking, data gathering, ethical practice. All of those are those buzzwords that are really highlight an application. And then really expressing your curiosity about a topic or having ideas for research questions based off of your clinical gaps. It really stands out. And I will say I've looked at applications as part of my role previous to NNPBC. And so you really can see the standout applicants when they are obviously passionate about what they want and what they're doing. Now, crafting a strong statement of intent, again, you have a very small, like 800 words for one of them to show the school who you are and why you want to go there. So it's really imperative, yeah, to demonstrate that you can be very clear and have that research question really tight. Again, if not, that's okay too. But now you can practice with those frameworks. And then connect your clinical background to your academic interests. And again, leveraging your clinical experience. And then highlight how their specific program will fit your long-term goal. Whether it's, you can say something like policy changes or teaching. It doesn't have to be like it's very specific, but those things too, that there is somewhat of a or like for myself, I was teaching, so I probably put that around education. It doesn't have to be written in stone, though. Um, and then, yeah, be specific about the faculty you like to work with or the advisor that you are aligned with as far as research goals. So taking a poke at the website and try to find an advisor that aligns with well, I guess this is maybe a spicy topic, but there's a couple of options when it comes to advisors. You can choose one that will align with your career goals and career trajectory. You can find an advisor that is more around your, I'll say, intrinsic capacity or interests. And so, yeah, it's just being a little bit strategic when it comes to choosing advisors, making sure you have references that are strong and applicable. So asking your managers, educators who can speak to your leadership potential. Um, and as somebody who's written a lot of reference letters, um, uh, please remind me who you are because I've taught for 8 years and I've had a lot of students. And so sometimes just sending me your CV or like a little note, be like, hey Tess, I was your in this class with you. So sometimes that's also helpful. So maybe I probably wouldn't have been that good of a reference for that student if I can't remember who they are, but just even, a little bit of a poke about who you are. Sometimes we get letters of reference. I know I have from they'll just show up and I'm like, "Oh, I don't know who this student is." So just give somebody a heads up about 4 to 6 weeks notice. Um, and also like really consider strengthening your CV or resume. One of the biggest helps for me is I paid somebody. I straight up paid somebody to do my CV. I'm proud of that because it was like I again that imposter syndrome. It was so helpful to have somebody who was a professional in creating a CV, who was able to again use all the things that we talked about earlier about leveraging your experience, and then put it in a way that was coherent. And so I've used that same template through for the last 10 years, and just updating it just because it is like, yeah, so just if you do have the funds, that's like, I can't recommend that enough. Um, yeah. And then, yeah, planning ahead. So checking for things like, oops, like deadlines, looking at funding applications, transcripts for folks that want to perhaps bolster some of their grades or their GPA, look at taking some classes beforehand. Certainly taking statistics tends to knock out a few folks. So consider doing that ahead. So those kinds of things. And here, yeah, here's the one of the examples I pulled from, I think it was UVic, about their personal statement. So like 800 words, they're asking quite a lot. So you have to be really kind of uh, tight and succinct when it comes to your application. But yeah.
And Tess, we have a couple questions in the
Oh,
chat.
perfect.
Thank you so
Awesome.
much. Thank you for reviewing some applications and those helpful tips. I remember the first time, yeah, exactly what you said, applying for grad school the first time and having the hardest time identifying those transferable skills. I had never been in a leadership role. I had never participated in research in any capacity when I applied for my master's. So it can be a bit challenging sometimes to actually identify the things that we see as
Yeah.
we're doing, day in, day out. It's hard to actually identify that those are transferable skills. Those,
Mhm.
those matter. Put those on your application. Yeah.
Especially when the application, I remember it was asking like to list your the textbook chapters you've written.
Oh,
Um,
I
not
haven't
quite.
done that yet. So we do have two questions that I
Perfect.
see. One is the average length of time to put research into practice is 17 years. What advice do you have to help reduce this gap? Um, I didn't know. I know the number I hear a lot of the time is it takes about 5 to 7 years to translate research into practice. I think one of the biggest things that help this is really when I start to think about joint appointments and collaborative research networks. When health systems and institutions work together towards common goals, I think some of those barriers are mitigated. When you have a research team grounded in both settings, and then in something that comes to the forefront of my mind is advocacy, and knowledge translation, getting the results out there. It's hard sometimes when we publish our work, it sits in an academic journal. us as researchers, we have no control over how or who takes up that research. So when Tess mentioned funding and how part of that funding can support knowledge translation, I think really pushing the results of your work out there, continuing to build on the research program or the research projects that you have started. So you've done one study, what's next? What can you build on? Really helps that integration into practice. But again, working closely with health organizations, health systems, I think is really important because ultimately that's often where we want our research findings to be implemented in. So,
Mhm.
Tess, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, and I think like again, not to like um advertise NNPBC, but really truly part of our role is this advocacy work. So you've done this amazing quality improvement project and now it's sitting in the ether. And so some of the things that we can certainly support is like, how do you leverage the work that you've done and how do you advocate for it to at least get a set of eyes on it? Or how do you perhaps present it at a conference if you've never done that before, or um, what kind of like there is a strategy involved with working with health authorities around leveraging results of studies, and so certainly we can help you with that. Like, uh, but I do agree there is a massive gap in when a research has started to when it's published to when it's implemented. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Tess. We
No.
have another question. Can
Mhm.
an RN, BSCN, MBA apply to a PhD in nursing? Or does one typically require a master's in nursing to get into a PhD in nursing program? Asking for a friend.
That I will say it depends. So that's where one of the points was to do a little bit of background research, asking those questions. Um, I know I can't speak to specifically each institution because it changes quite a bit, but I know that you absolutely can. There are options to even start an MN and go into a PhD. There's folks that have had masters in other disciplines. So it really amounts to if you meet the entrance requirements, but absolutely. There's
Yeah, absolutely. I was
100,
going to say the same thing, Tess.
yeah.
There's people that start their master's but don't finish it and just fast track right into a PhD. So
Mhm.
get the requirements for each institution. And of course, a PhD in nursing is a really great experience. It really allows you the time and enables you to really become, an expert in your area of interest and its relationship to nursing. And although it's Nursing Week and I advocate for PhDs in nursing, there are various different PhDs that, depending on your area of interest and the work that you want to do as a nurse. You can absolutely explore the various options that all the institutions in Canada offer. So, and if you ever want help or guidance on that too, again, reach out to your professional association. We are home to all BC nurses, regardless of domain of practice or practice setting. We're here to walk alongside of you. We're here to support you. Um, and when we don't know the answer, we work really hard to direct you in the right area. So this was a brief presentation on some key research concepts and insights. Tess, thank you so much for this incredible presentation. I wish I got this when I graduated from my undergrad. I was telling Tess the other day that I graduated from my BSN and didn't know what a PhD was. I had no idea. The irony of me starting one, not that long after is not lost on me. So, um, but yeah, please reach out to us. And thank you so much for joining us today. I'm noticing it's 12:01 and
Oh,
probably your lunchtime for many of you. So again,
that's a
happy Nurse
question.
Week.
Yeah, happy Nerds this week. And
Yeah.
thank you, Sue. I'll say what my spicy research is really
Oh,
quick,
yeah.
but if that's okay. Um, so I study the concept of suffering. I'm not even joking. That's my concept. And I'm looking at the concept of suffering in the context of assisted dying for folks who are requesting MAID for mental illness as their sole underlying medical condition. So it's called MD Sumac. So I'm particularly interested in how nurse practitioners, who are so far the only nurses in the world who are able to assess, approve, and administer assisted dying. I'm curious specifically how they are conceptualizing the like suffering, and how they're assessing it in people with mental illness. So they are approved for MAID. So yeah, it's a little spicy, but that's what I'm doing. Yeah.
It's a beautiful concept we have written in the chat, and I'm seeing all the claps. It is an
Oh.
incredible piece of work, Tess. So
Thank you. Yeah, very excited to get it out in the world. Yeah, it's my heart work for sure. And like Elena was saying, thank you so much for joining us on a Friday, uh, right before a long weekend to talk about research and let us kind of nerd out a little bit. So
absolutely.
all the best to everyone, and please reach out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.